Jason Bennett Joey Pignataro here, and Joey, we live in a generation of football change. It's opened up to reflect society a lot better than it used to, there's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. And with the influx of women, not only on the field, and they've been there for decades, but much more visible through AFLW and through roles behind the scenes as well. The on-field, off-field balance of that's been really important, and a wonderful example of that is Laura Kane.
The former Melbourne Uni superstar, who's these days running AFL House and doing a terrific job. In doing so, Jace, she's got a storied history with the game of Australian rules football.
And a wonderful career, and it started, as you said, through the VAFA. She's a VAFA alumni and someone that the VAFA's very, very proud of. And wonderful for the VAFA to have people like Laura in positions of power and influence, because they do understand the ins and outs of community footy because they've lived it.
Absolutely, and her story is probably like many others, isn't it? You're a young girl who wants to play Australian rules football. You get the opportunity. Now, for full transparency, Laura and I are the same age, born in 1990. You can imagine both of us being 12 years old. We're in the same school team or same weekend junior team, and then at 12, Laura's told she can no longer play and I'm allowed to keep going. And a lot of girls in my age bracket have that experience and have that story. Hers is exactly the same. I think she kept on playing though, Jason, until she got the opportunity with Melbourne Uni women's footy side.
Well, Laura's story is a wonderful story, and we have the privilege of catching up with her.
Laura Kane, welcome to the Amos podcast. How you going?
Good.
Laura's been involved with the Amos for how long?
Since, well, quite a while. It depends which way you look at it. Certainly since the start of the women's competition through Melbourne Uni. But I joined Melbourne Uni when I was 12 years old, so it was a long time coming, our entry.
Why footy, Laura? What drew you to the game in the first place?
Both sides of my family are mad footy supporters, so I was born into it. I think my dad held me up to the window at St Andrew's Hospital in East Melbourne and said Collingwood would win a premiership over there in 3 months, and they did. So it's been with me from the start, but yeah, played Auskick. I think we were allocated netball in grade prep, but got my mum to write a letter to say that I wanted to play footy, and I did, and I think the rest is history.
So as you said, you joined Melbourne Uni when you were year 7, so you were 12, but there was no youth girls footy at that time, was there? So you spent the first few years unable to play a game, but you trained, I think. Did you train just for 3 years without being able to play?
I did, yeah. I played junior boys footy first. So Chermside Park, where I grew up, the Panthers, I played there until under 12s, and then, yeah, there was no competition for girls, and obviously I couldn't continue on with the boys. So walking home from school, saw Melbourne Uni women's training, and yeah, trained with them until I was 15 or 16 when the first youth girls competition started and we entered a team.
That must have been incredibly difficult, and it speaks to your passion that for 3 years you could just run around with everybody and they feel like your teammates, but then on the weekend you're not allowed to be part of it.
Oh, yeah, to be honest, I loved it. It felt like I played every other night, because training was as good as it got, and so I had the best time. I loved that women were playing footy, and at the time didn't even think about playing and just was pumped to get to training after school.
Has that experience of not being able to play and having that gap in your footy life where you were excluded, has that had a major impact on your quest to grow women's footy in the years since?
I think so, but not consciously at the time. So it wasn't something that I really understood when I was a teenager, but I certainly think in the formative years, knowing that it was hard or that there were challenges or things that you had to overcome, and that was just what you had to do, has now helped. And I think it just gives you a little bit of perspective and balance. It helps you realise that we've come a really long way in a really short period of time, and that we shouldn't be in a hurry, and we should make sure that we reflect on the fact that this has all happened very quickly, and that's something that we should be proud of, but also acknowledge that, there's still a long future ahead of us.
Speaking of pride, Joey, the VAFA has got a great pride in all its alumni, and when you've got 13,000 players going around every year, it is a massive alumni. So to see people like Laura succeed, you see Francis Evans last week end up on Carlton's list, there's a real sense of pride amongst the VAFA community when we see one of our own rise up and chase their dream.
It's awesome, in short. And I've done this podcast for the last 7 or 8 years, and every single player, be it in male form or now the females, of course the AFLW and VFLW, every time we see one of the Amos girls or Mert boys get the opportunity to play higher up, I love it. Share their Instagram posts, the club celebrates it, which is fantastic. Can we just go back to when you finally got the opportunity to play, Laura? What was that feeling like that day? Can you remember it?
Yeah, there were 4 teams in the competition, so we played each other every third week, and that didn't matter either. We loved it. Youth girls was amazing. We were so excited.
Did it feel like a new frontier at the time?
Totally. We played school footy. I went to University High School, so sort of University High School, Princess Hill, secondary, joined forces, and we had the girls playing at Melbourne Uni and our guy friends playing at Fitzroy. So they would ride their bike to come and see us at JJ Holland Park, and we would get dropped off at Brunswick Street Oval later on that day. So it was just really exciting. It felt really social. All of our parents were so excited. I think we had about 12 assistant coaches, mums and dads everywhere. I think we had 4 water runners. They were just so excited for us. So I can remember it, and it was a really big part of my teenage years for sure.
How has your VAFA experience, when you look back on it now, coming through that system and that program and that competition and that community, how has that shaped you as a person and then ultimately as a professional?
Yeah, it's been incredibly important. Again, probably not realising it at the time, but to, in my mid-20s, join the committee and become the president of our local club, obviously having a team that participated and then teams in the AMOs in the female space, but to merge with the Blues and Blacks through that period of time taught me a lot of things about integration, particularly with men's football programs. So to go on to North Melbourne and clearly now in this role being, involved in how that works at the elite level, I learnt so much about the practical challenges, maybe the philosophical challenges, but then the joy that comes when you get 2 groups of people who otherwise haven't integrated to integrate. So, I learnt a lot. Probably, again, didn't realise it was happening at the time.
Did you learn how much Blues and Blacks hate each other?
We were the sister in the middle. We still are. No, they're okay. The board rose above, but I certainly got to learn around the relationship and the history and the Reds that fitted in there.
Oh, yes,
at some point along the journey, the under-19s. I'm well versed with all of the ongoings at the Melbourne Uni Footy Club.
Tell us about your on-field career. What sort of player were you? How long did you actually play?
I was centre-half forward. I was certainly in the glory half of the ground trying to kick goals. I didn't really enjoy the midfield that much. I just like getting the ball and kicking goals, but probably not working as hard as our midfielders did. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I played until early 20s when I went to uni and travelled overseas, and then I became a coach at the club when I got back. So I really, really enjoyed it.
Let's talk about the importance of community footy more generally. Its importance to society. Footy clubs are a great place to be, and you've already spoken about the sort of lessons that you can learn there. It's really heartening to see there's such a focus at AFL House now on community football. So to talk to us a little bit about where it now sits in the equation, plans for the future, and why the AFL look at community footy and say, hey, this is a really important piece of who we are as a sport.
Yeah, Rob Old, who's our EGM of game development, looks after community football nationally. He says that community football shakes hands with the soul of Australia. And every time he says it, I get my hairs stand up a little bit because it's right. It's so important to communities all over the country, metropolitan, regional, hours and hours away from anything. People will congregate at the local footy club, local netball club, and find joy for years and years and years, decades, generations, etc. So we're really proud of the responsibility that we have and the work that we do in game development. We obviously made a decision years ago through our commission to enshrine 10% of our revenue to reinvest in game developments, boys, girls, umpires, facilities, everything in between. But we all have experience with community footy clubs, and we're also fond of those experiences, that it is certainly not lost on us how important it is for the country and for young people growing up.
A couple of years ago, Jace, when I was sitting in your chair as the media man at the AMOs, we did a series about the legends of the AMOs, and a handful of them had gone on and played in the VFL, VFA in their day, and in the AFL, and their greatest and fondest memories, on the back of what you just said, Laura, is some of the local club premierships they won as an under-18 before they were picked. They still remember the time at Hampton Rovers when something happened in the canteen and just stopped the game, because that's a fonder memory for them than potentially running out in the MCG in front of 60, 70,000. There's a handful of Melbourne Uni girls, Laura, who are premiership players in 2018. I was actually calling that game. It was against Marcelin. It was the second year of the competition. Started out in, I think, windy, overcast conditions. The sun came out in the third quarter. It started hailing. It was disgusting what happened at Elsternwick Park that day. Were you there?
The photos are amazing. I remember that game, but there's a photo of one of our players with rain pouring that looks like she's in the shower.
Yes.
So it's, I remember it.
As someone who played at the club, then you went on to the administration and the coaching, to see them win the second flag in the competition's history, how was that day?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I've never played or coached in a premiership winning side. I've coached, I think, 3 or 4 losing grand finals. So to be on the committee for a premiership was a thrill. But we get the same thrill. You know, we've got 30-odd Melbourne Uni girls running around in the AFLW competition. We've got captains, coaches, player managers. And I think the thrill still extends to when they win premierships and we see AFLW premierships. But Melbourne Uni have been around for a while, and we had some fierce battles with Darebin and the Devils and a few other clubs. So to win one in the VAFA early days was a big thrill for us.
Recently, I had the pleasure of sitting in on a Channel 7 AFL presentation. You guys came along and had a great chat to us about plans behind the scenes and what's going on. And Dills ran through some community football numbers. It really opened my eyes, actually, about not only is it the right thing to do to support community footy, it's also the smart thing to do to support community footy, in that the numbers that come through community footy, as many people attend community footy as attend AFL games, and the economic impact of community footy is enormous as well, Laura. So every time we hear that clubs are thriving, it's wonderful news. And every time we hear that clubs are struggling, we know we need to sort of find ways to help them, because it makes sense, doesn't it, on every level?
Yeah, it does. And there's an economic piece, there's a social piece, there's a health piece, there's a community piece. I mean, we need hundreds of ovals, more ovals, and that's a really good problem to have, because it means we've got so many kids wanting to play all through the ages, whether they stay in the same competition, the same club, or they, footy follows them when they move around for their own life endeavours. But the numbers are extraordinary. And you only have to go to a community footy, country grand final. There's like 5,000 people there.
Yeah.
And the best part is you can drive your car right up to the fence, and I love it. I love local footy. But thousands of people are going to watch, thousands of people are playing, hundreds of thousands of people are playing, and it's something that is certainly part of the work that we do. It's not just the elite game, it's everything else.
And Joey, all of us have been fortunate enough to live in a generation where we've seen the impact of women's footy and community footy, and then the AFLW come in and supercharge that as well.
Absolutely. So 2017, the Amos put together their first women's competition. I don't think anyone, even in their most positive, wildest expectations, ever saw it being what it got to, and still what it is now. I think earlier on in the week we were talking about how many sections they're going to be in 2025.
6 women's divisions, women's thirds, women's under-19s, plus your premier divisions. It's unbelievable.
But in 2017, when the first 10 sides opted in, which was outstanding, again, I don't even think we thought we'd get 10 teams. Hampton and Ormond played the very first women's game under lights the year before, and then we started with the premier women's competition. The boom exploded. Unfortunately, my team, St Bernard's, we had 1 year of women's football, and then the Essendon District swallowed us. So I'm not very happy with the Essendon District Footy League, Jace. But, Laura, did you expect 7-8 years ago to see where we are now with the growth of women's footy?
I mean, yes and no. Certainly not to the volume. I think and they still may be the largest community women's league in the country. For a long while it was, at least, when I was involved at Melbourne Uni on the committee. I think the desire was there, the passion was there. Everyone in the existing men's clubs loved footy, and the benefit that a lot of these clubs had was infrastructure. Mm-hmm. There was schools, ovals, change rooms, facilities, and things that, some community footy leagues are struggling with at the moment, and we're doing a lot of work to try and help grow that infrastructure. And so it's probably not a surprise that you had a large cohort of people, men and women, who loved footy, were passionate about it, had facilities available, and wanted to see this competition grow, and that's what it did. But it is remarkable. The competition now is remarkable.
And what I really love, Laura and Jace, is that in 2017, 2018, I'd say maybe 90% of the teams there, the team that ran out for the women's side was a lot of the partners' girlfriends, or similar situation to you, Laura. They played up until they were 12, weren't allowed to play for 5 or 6 years, finally got the opportunity to do so. Now there are pathways from Auskick all the way through, and as you just said before, there's under-19s now for the competition. they're superstars on the field, and you only need to watch last year's grand final in the Amos if you see Old Scotch and St Kevin's and some of the names that ran around for those two sides. You only need to watch the VFLW grand final last year, North Melbourne and the Bulldogs. That was a high spectacle. And then, of course, your team, North Melbourne, in the AFLW. The pathways now, Jace, through the roof.
The great thing about the pathways, Joey, it's not just on field, it's off field as well. And I want to talk to Laura about the trailblazing aspect of it. This is the first generation where our sport has had women in positions of genuine power and influence. What has that meant for the game?
Yeah, it's incredible. I think there have been women in influential positions for many years. So if you think about Sue Alberti and Jan Cooper and Debbie Lee, and there's a million.
Jill Lindsay,
Jenny Luffman. Yep. There's some of them are still here. But the visibility, I think, is the sort of the shift, and to see what the AFLW in particular has done to the competition. I mean, we had 16% of our senior leadership as women in 2018. We're now just over 50%, and that's very recently and a rapid shift. The visibility is really important. To see female umpires, female coaches, to have Emma Carney and Daisy Pearce and Erin Phillips coaching in men's programs and then going on to get the jobs that they want to get, senior coaches for AFLW or in the media or here, is a proper thrill for us. And I think that you bring balance to decision making, you talk to a much bigger audience, and you just have a different voice. And so I think the women have always been there. I think it just looks a bit different now.
I got two daughters. One's 21, one's 19. They've both grown up loving footy in their teenage years.
They're good players?
The older one played in a premiership at Rowville and then hurt her foot, so she doesn't play anymore. But she works at the Western Bulldogs in the high performance department. She's doing her honours out there at the moment, and she is the high performance manager down at Old Geelong as well. So that's the thing. All these positions of influence and visibility, and my younger one is doing a law degree, and she wants to do what you are doing, Laura. Eventually, she wants to
take Laura's job
in a sports.
Well, you can't do that
in a sports law.
You can't tell Laura.
Just give me some time.
Laura will be the Prime Minister by then. She'll be the PM by then, so that'll be fine. But it must give you a great sense of satisfaction to know, because there's so many people out there that you're influencing that you don't know, that you haven't actually physically met, but to know that you're in a position where you can have an influence on so many young girls and women coming through to say, well, Laura's doing that and Daisy's doing this. It's no longer of, gee, I wish I could. It's like, well, I can.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's something that I'm really proud of, that little girls but also little boys don't know any different. So the influence that women have on the competition is, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's an entire generation of young boys that don't know any difference. I mean, my cousin's little boy, he's 11, and he has a folder of footy cards. He's mad for it, collects them. I have to buy them for him all the time. But he has all of the players mixed. He just has them by club. And every time he opens it and I see that, I just have the moment thinking he doesn't know any different. He doesn't know that an AFL or an AFLW player are different. He just knows they all play for Carlton or Melbourne. Yeah. And that's the influence that will transcend generations, because they don't know anything else.
Well, I think that's a good example. There's Jazz Fleming, who plays for Hawthorn. Of course, her brother Braden is collegians, and Damien, her dad, is the great cricketer. A young fella has her number on his back, number 5, I'm pretty sure, if I've got that right from memory of last year. And you asked the young fella, number 5 must be your favourite player for all. He said, yeah, Jazz Fleming. That has no difference between men and women. Just sees them play football, loves it, watches every game, goes and watches Hawthorn. So that's exactly sort of what you're talking to here, Laura. Can I ask you, it might be a simplistic question. Are you enjoying the job?
Love it. Yeah. I love it so much. It sometimes doesn't feel like a job. It's such a joy working in footy. I think I love it mostly because of how much people love the game. So sometimes that can look like pressure. Sometimes it can look like criticism or feedback or things that people have an opinion on, but it all boils down to them loving the game and talking about the game that they love, and that sometimes love gets emotional. So it's a real privilege. So yeah, I am really enjoying it.
Now, Jace, before you go, I don't know if I was allowed on the Oval last year after North Melbourne beat Brisbane in the
Did you have your accreditation on? Because Laura would have been watching.
I was actually standing right next to Laura, so I wasn't sure if I should be standing here or if I should be over there. I was too excited,
I wouldn't have been noticing.
Well, this is what I wanted to bring up, because, of course, after your time at Melbourne Uni, you then moved into the space with the Kangaroos and you helped get the licence for the Roos, and they've been a powerhouse, and obviously last year finally got the success that I think the footy club deserved under Darren Crocker. As someone who spent a lot of time with the Kangaroos, again, that emotional connection that you've got with them, what was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was so good. You don't lose it. I mean, my family, we grew up Collingwood supporters.
Same.
I never thought I would be a person that could change teams, and then I started working for another club and certainly changed. But you just know the players so well, the men and the women's team, the staff. You know how much goes in behind the scenes and how much it means to them. And I also know how hard the team worked when we were part of that expansion side, and we spent hours and hours and days and months and years trying to build that team. So I was so thrilled for them. I saw Sonia and Jen just before the end, and you can just tell what it means to both of them as well. So it was a really, really good day.
We've come a long way in community footy and women's footy, but the struggle continues. It is difficult. It's difficult economic times, and community clubs out there have got the same challenges they've always had. Women's footy, whilst we've come a long way, there's still a long way to go. What is your advice to people that are out there at community level, or young girls that are still playing footy that still look at it and go, well, you know, we still don't get treated like the boys get treated, etc. Can't change everything overnight. What would be your advice to people to sort of maintain the faith and to keep working?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth it. They love it. They're there because they love it. It's such a joy. It's a lot of fun. There might be challenges. They might be operational. Like I said before, they might be philosophical, but it's just stick with it and keep trying to find a workaround, because the outcome is so beneficial to the girls that play, the boys that see them play, the clubs more broadly. So I think you're right. We haven't been going, at least at the elite level, for that long, 10 seasons, 9 years. It's not a large amount of time. So I'm really excited for what happens next and the influence that has on community football. I know it cascades down.
Thank you so much for your time and your incredibly busy schedule. As VAFA alumni, we're so proud of everything that you do, and thank you for flying the flag for the VAFA the way you do so proudly. Thanks for everything you're doing for the game. Best of luck for the season ahead.
Thank you so much.